In the fantasy hockey game, those astute GMs that are taking it to the top every single season, they get into the good and the bad. On the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we got to take a look at the most disappointing fantasy performances from this past season so you know what to do for next. Let's tap in and get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy hump day, my fantasy fanatics. Welcome back inside the lab to your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey breakdowns, NHL news, and all of the betting picks that you need to put a little paper in that pocketbook. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Steele, I can't say it enough how much I appreciate everyone out there legitimately holding us down all season long. We are here for you guys Monday through Friday, and if not, you can find us on a Saturday special. But honestly, Steele, I mentioned it off the top, it's not always rainbows and roses. And sometimes knowing the players that have disappointed, knowing the players to perhaps fade is just as or more important than targeting the ones set to explode. So on today's episode, we're taking a look at fantasy disappointments, players with a lot of expectations, and what could maybe happen with them next season. Look, a lot of GMs out there ready to turn the page. We're here for everybody, those still in it, those turning the page, and everyone in between. Over to you. Top disappointments, 5 through 1. We got a list. Who you looking at?
Yeah, there could be a lot of people on the top 5 list for disappointing seasons. You know, I've talked about Mika Zibanejad a lot this year and the disappointment I've had in him for fantasy hockey. I chose to stay away from players who have been dealt significant injuries throughout the year. So Kirill Kaprizov, Jack Hughes, your boy Miro Heiskanen. I decided to give him a night off.
I appreciate that. You gave me a break on that one.
No more verbal torture for Miro Heiskanen on this one because, look, they're injured, and obviously we know that's a huge hit to your fantasy hockey teams, and sometimes you can't predict injuries so much for a lot of these players. So decided to leave the injured guys off this list. For me, at number 5, have to talk about Brock Faber and the disappointing season he has had so far this year in Minnesota. When you look at where he was drafted on average in fantasy hockey, he was being drafted in round 6.7, an ADP of 68.6. So it's a very high pick for a very young defenseman. You know, starting next year, his 8-year, $8.5 million deal kicks in for Minnesota. After a really good rookie season, putting up 47 points in the full 82 games, 150 blocks, 65 hits, 136 shots. We thought this player was going to explode on this scene in Minnesota, quarterbacking that top power play unit. And that just hasn't been the case so far this year. He's down almost 20 points, 24 points in 71 games this year. Shooting percentage is actually up. With that being said, his seven goals on 102 shots, but the blocks are down, the hits are down, the shots on goal are down. When you're drafting this guy in the 6th round, and he has a preseason rank on Yahoo of 122, and now a current rank of 357, he's not living up to expectations. So I think going into next year, a lot of GMs out there are going to look at Brock Faber in a different light, maybe not picking him so high as the 6th round, maybe letting him slide down to the 8th, 9th round potentially. Obviously, a huge factor in his production is not having the skilled talent around him. Kaprizov being out on the regular, Joel Eriksson Ek being out on the regular, and as well just not having enough significant talent overall in Minnesota right now. Like a lot of people know, it's not really the best team to go out and watch. It's not the best team, above average team in the National Hockey League right now, and Faber's having an average season this year.
I think that there's a lot to be said about this team being somewhat average, Steele, and I'm really not
Yeah.
trying to take away from a team that's also, as we record this episode, still holding down the top wild card spot. But I said it about the St. Louis Blues as well. I don't see either of those squads getting through anybody in the postseason, let alone what I believe in them next season for fantasy value. So Faber is a very interesting player. You mentioned the contract. There isn't a ton of love around him other than aside from, Boldy, Rossi, Kaprizov, not a sexy team. So does that mean my bounce back level for this player is a little bit lower? Maybe I have to see a bit more from him is what I'm trying to say, because still lots to like about Faber, but coming into this season, a lot of hype around this player as well. You saw it reflected in his ADP. I think that's very high for this player, but we're seeing it on the ice this season. Look, this is a polarizing piece. Evan Bouchard is a guy that I think has fallen into this trap, Steele, and we are going to start to get to the playoff breakdowns for the NHL this season. I say it every year. Don't let playoff performances over or under inflate a player's value headed into draft season for fantasy cats. And that's exactly what happened to Evan Bouchard this year. He carried over a really good regular season into a magical postseason. And we were throwing him out there as a second or a third blue liner off the board this year, Steele. And look, 58 points in 73 games. He has 21 power play points. He has, the 210 shots on net are actually up from last season. But what you got to look at here is when your expectations to production, and when you had 82 points last year, 58 points is still good. But for me, this is a big disappointment. And on the brink of a whole bunch of disappointments, and you're going to talk about another Oiler, can throw Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in here. You can throw a couple of other players in here for disappointments, maybe even McDavid. These Oilers are at a tipping point. And if Bouchard doesn't start to really impact play, put aside fantasy, the Oilers themselves are going to be massive disappointments.
Yeah, and he's had a rough year. For me, a lot of things stick out with Evan Bouchard this year. One of them, his work ethic. He has shown a very
Good point.
compared to last year's work ethic has not been the same, not strong this year. Very poor work ethic, as well as his intuition. He just seems to always be making mistake after mistake, and it builds up, and then a big mistake happens, costing his team a goal in the defensive zone. Again, just so many times you see him where he could be fighting for the puck. He could beat out an icing call and just chooses not to use his legs, not use his skates. The opposite for Zach Hyman, who comes in at number 4 on my list. This guy works his tail off, works his butt off every single shift he's on the ice. It just hasn't gone his way this year. And we all knew there was going to be a regression offensively with the player. Coming off a 54 goal season, he's never done that before. So we knew it wasn't going to be like that again. But to drop from 77 points to 44 points in 1 year is huge. The blocks are down, the hits are down, the shots on goal are down significantly from 290 to 197 this year. And again, it's one of those guys where you have to depend on him. It can't just be up to McDavid and Draisaitl every single night, especially with the way, like I've said so many times now over the last month, the guys that they brought in the offseason haven't lived up to their end of the deal with signing with the Edmonton Oilers. Zach Hyman, you need him to be there on a nightly basis, and he just hasn't been there this year. Again, it's just one of those years where we knew it was going to happen, but not to this degree.
These are all pieces that I would say you have to be wary of what you do with them headed into next draft season. A number of these players, Steele, before we did this kind of breakdown, headed into this season, they would have been auto keepers. And now in the keeper dynasty realm, and I like to throw out that angle sometimes, some of these players could be questionable. Most of them, I'm still going to say, are keepers on a lot of teams out there. But a player that I'll talk about in Alexis Lafreniere right around the break might be right on the cusp. The expectations were so high, much like the rest of these players. I got 3 picks ready to roll for tonight's 5-game NHL betting board, looking to stay hot from last week. We're going to have a whole bunch of NHL playoff picks ready to roll as well. Previews, breakdowns, X factors. Keep it tapped right here to the pod. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, you know you need to crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts you can get. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and the better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep full longer. Honestly, me at my desk, Steele, I like to get down on the no-shell variety. It's a grab-and-go snack any day, especially busy days. If you love cracking open every single shell, a satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are also an absolute classic. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs that protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com today to learn more.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. We appreciate you out there. We love you out there for all the love and support you show us Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button. Leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Rodin. Over to you, my friend. I know we both have Alexis Lafreniere on this list. I know we got a goaltender and, a forward who a few years ago was an absolute star and now is completely withered away this year in Vancouver. But over to you, Alexis Lafreniere. Why does he make it onto the top 5 worst draft picks this year?
Look, nobody wants to talk about disappointments, especially because a lot of these players' struggles have been so well documented for obvious reasons. We've relied on them. We've invested in them fantasy-wise. You mentioned the ADP of Brock Faber. Alexis Lafreniere was a very, very sexy, attractive player headed into last season's draft. We talked about him as a breakout. Everybody loved the progression. 39 points 2 years ago, up to 57 points. The hits were up. The body was going. He was really showing signs of being what we expected him to be. And everyone is still remembering he's only 22 years old. And maybe it has a lot to do with the New York Rangers around him, Steele, and a young player who clearly has confidence issues at times. Hit me with your take on that in a second. But the fact remains, the expectations were high. And you and I throw out a lot of predictions on this show. That's what the name of the fantasy game is. And I think sometimes what's important is to come full circle, even if we were wrong. I was wrong. I was expecting Alexis Lafreniere to be that peripheral beast for you and bring 60, 70, who knows, maybe 80 points. And this year, 108 hits, nice. The shot total, 143, down. Points, 43, obviously way down. Minus 13. To me, this is definitely bigger disappointments. I just really expected the breakout. The fact that it went the other way, really frustrating as well.
That's why he makes my top 5 as well. He comes in at number 3. And when you look at where he was getting drafted on average, he was his ADP was 120.3. So he's getting drafted in the middle of round 11, round 12. So it's not that terrible when you look at it that way. But I agree with you. A major disappointment because of where we projected him to be at this point in the season and where we projected the New York Rangers to be at this season.
Sure.
We expected them to be a playoff team. We expected them, I expected them to be a top of the Metropolitan and absolutely dominating the Eastern Conference. But and I had them as my winner for the Stanley Cup. And now they're on the bubble right now, fighting for the second wild card spot. So we can't entirely blame Alexis Lafreniere because that entire organization just blew up mid-season and everybody started to struggle. Like I said, Mika Zibanejad, Adam Fox at some point. Shesterkin was struggling for a month there. I believe it was in January or February where he was off his game.
Really bad power play as well, Steele.
Really bad power play. It's been better since the trade with JT Miller. He gives him that little oomph on there as well, offensively and physically. Alexis Lafreniere, number 3 for me as well. Again, he brings that physical aspect, but the fact that it went it trended down this year after we believed it was going to be a breakout season.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just like when you look at the last 10 to 11 years, in the NHL, the first overall draft pick from 2014, when you look at all those guys, immediate impact for when they enter the NHL, Aaron Ekblad, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Nico Hischier, Rasmus Dahlin, even Uri Slavkovsky's coming into his own this year. Connor Bedard, Macklin Celebrini. To me, there's really only two players in the last 10 years, or first overall players in the last 10 years, that haven't really figured out their game at this level yet. And that's Alexis Lafreniere and Owen Power right now over the last 10 years. So two guys who still, lack confidence on a consistent basis. And it's disappointing to say, even though he was getting drafted in the 11th round on average, still disappointing because we thought he'd be a lot better.
What you have to honestly point out, I still can't believe Owen Power is a first overall selection, number one. Number two, you mentioned it with the Rangers. It's been covered at length. The team overall has really disappointed. This falls into the bucket. Boom, bap. Be careful with what you do with Alexis Lafreniere, especially this summer. To me, depending on the format and the depth of your league, he's not remaining a keeper for me. I would rather take a shot on him and putting him back in the draft pool and perhaps banking on something a little bit more rock solid. The New York Rangers are, however, before I move on to my next player, which I think is clear, they are still lurking around, Steele. And that's a dark horse written all over them when you have Shesterkin. So currently 77 points, tied with the Montreal Canadiens. Whatever splits have the Habs in that spot as we record this on Tuesday night late. Let's get to Connor Bedard. And let me explain my reasoning thusly. I understand last year's injury, 68 games, 61 points. To me and to most people out there, a kid at 18 years old, you're very happy with that. This is where the expectations really put this into disappointment. And perhaps we were wrong in the fantasy community. I don't have his ADP up, but in my leagues anyway, and that's 4 or 5 of them, he's going off the board in deeper leagues, with 12 or 14 GMs as early as the late second round. And when you look at what you get out of him, especially no peripheral love, which is not his game, we're not faulting him for that. But if you're talking about draft stock and what you want to do with these selections, he falls in at the third spot for the most disappointing fantasy season. And I know a lot of people out there are going to say 58 points in 74 games still good, and flip, wake up, the Chicago Blackhawks are doo-doo, and it's going to take some time. But when you look at where he was drafted and when you look at what I expected out of him, he's looked like a passenger at a lot of times this season, Steele. And that throws up a red flag for me. Because look at what you just said about Alexis Lafreniere. And I'm not trying to put the two in the exact same bucket by styles of play or by quality or anything. I'm just trying to say, just because you went first overall and you looked really good in junior doesn't always translate immediately into that fit. Boom. You have to separate him. You and I talk about this all the time. Is he going to be important to the Chicago Blackhawks rebuild for 20 years or whatever? Probably. Is he going to be a stud still? Yes. But manage your fantasy expectations, especially with a player like Bedard, who won't cover you with that peripheral category value. Maybe it's me who's gotten burned, Steele. But to me, this is a major disappointment considering the expectations that came in for this player.
I've got his ADP up right here. He had an ADP of 31.2 this season, so he was getting drafted on average in the third round. And look, I got to put my hand up for this one because I drafted him in both the casual and competitive league.
I don't blame you.
In the third round both times. And I see where you're coming from, and I agree with your points. And for me, I'm sitting on the fence with this take with Connor Bedard because I understand and I agree that the expectations of Connor Bedard, coming into the league, comparing him to Connor McDavid, generational talent, the skill just outshines everybody in Chicago right now. But to your point as well, look at what he's got to play with in Chicago. I mean, if you're drafting him in the third round, second round, it seems like a bad pick because this is what, I mean, in all honesty, what else can you expect from Connor Bedard with Ryan Donato and Ilya Mikheyev playing on your wing right now? So the team, it's hard to compare the Rangers, like you said, to the Blackhawks because of the talent Bedard is surrounded at right now. So I'm on the fence with you. I'm with you, but I'm not with you at the same time. But
I like it.
the expectations for Connor Bedard moving forward, again, if this is a keeper league, obviously you're drafting him in the top 3 rounds, second round, third round, first round.
And he remains a keeper, most definitely.
And he remains a keeper. Year to year league, again, until we see what happens in the offseason with Chicago, I think we need to start treading a little bit lighter on Connor Bedard and how high we're drafting him. So I agree with you there.
Boom. And we got bets coming. I got 2 players that I want to get to very, very quickly. Steele, we'll spit them up rapid fire. This is what happens when you break down disappointing situations, because fantasy GMs out there need to know what to do with it. So we'll continue to break down everything that you need the rest of the week. Steele, take us there, my friend. I'm ready for bets and our last 2 players.
Big time bets coming up next. Of course, this episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Top 5 worst picks, top 5 disappointments this season in the Fantasy Hockey 2024-25 season. 2 players left from each of us, and then we'll get to big time bets. Flip, who are you looking at? Who makes the top 2 for you?
I'm going to get this one out quick, because also the first one is obvious. Number 1 spot is obvious, and it's been covered, so I think we can wrap this one up neat and tidy. Jeremy Swayman is a disappointment. This is a very serious one. If you're a guy like me who does put a little bit more stock into drafting big goaltenders, and this is one for the boys at the Apples and Gino. Shout out to Blake in the comments, by the way. We see you always out there supporting. 2-9-2 for Swayman in his last 13 games. When I can remember back in draft season, he was going off the board very early, Steele, like too early. And when you looked at numbers over the last couple of seasons, that kind of made sense from that angle. But when you remember this is his first shot without the Linus Ullmark security blanket, this is a year with this Boston Bruins finally going down the route of a downfall that we've been predicting. And maybe this is something we should have foreseen. And maybe, just maybe, Jeremy Swayman is a little bit of a fugazi. I'm not going to go there. We don't have the time to talk about it in depth. I still believe he's a good goaltender. I'm just throwing out a little bit of a playful term here. But when you look at an .874 save percentage down the stretch here in his last 13 games played, I guarantee you there's a lot of fantasy GMs out there that got burned by this man this season. And when you look at his ADP, which I don't have up, but I know it was very high, and this is a perfect example where 0G and passing on this guy and waiting and going into other guys who are far less invested in, which Jeremy Swayman, you would have been high draft capital. For me, he comes in as a big disappointment at number 2. But I also have been burned by goalies in the past, Steele, and it's hard for me to manage my goaltending roster. I'll just be honest.
ADP of 71.4. So he was getting drafted on average between round 6 and 7.
Wow. So
Jeremy
high.
Swayman, very high for a guy that wasn't even signed yet.
So
for,
high.
Losing his partner in crime, Linus Ullmark, to the Ottawa Senators. So he definitely deserves to be on the list. For me, number 2 comes in at Carter Verhaeghe, your boy, I believe, Niagara.
I didn't want to talk about this deal.
Didn't want to talk about it. Look, guy puts up back-to-back seasons of 70-plus points and now only has 47 in 73 played. You know, when you take a step back, when you look at his full stat board this year, it's been pretty consistent. You know, the blocks are the same, the hits are the same, the shots are the exact same. There's 2 major categories where I look at for Carter Verhaeghe. Number 1, I play in a lot of leagues with the plus minus category. He has a minus 37 plus minus differential right now.
Actually.
Very shocking. He's been very good throughout his career in the defensive zone. He went from a plus 17 last year to a minus 20. You have to go back to his rookie season where he was at a minus 9, which was his next worst. So that's number one, minus 20 so far this season. Also, the shooting percentage. He's been a consistent 13 to 15% shooter throughout his entire career. This year, he's rocking a 7.6% shooting percentage.
Good.
So that's a major factor in his value for fantasy hockey. If this player is not putting the puck behind, in between the posts, in the back of the net, his value significantly decreases because majority of his value and points come from him scoring goals, and a little bit difficult on again, somewhat the same as Zach Hyman on the power play, just hasn't been able to find the back of the net, not capitalizing on those good opportunities from his teammates setting him up. Just again, been one of those years, but that is a significant contributing factor to his value. If he's not scoring, the value significantly decreases. Same for this player who we both have at number one, Elias Pettersson. We're not going to get in length on him because we've talked about it a lot this year.
Don't need to. Yep.
Elias Pettersson, 45 points in 64 games. The fact that this just 2 seasons ago, he hit triple digits with 102 in 80 games. It's almost unfathomable to see a decline at this rate for a superstar in the league who's 26 years old, who signs a major, massive contract, I believe over $11 million. Shooting percentage down, only 109 shots on net this season. Obviously, everyone knows the turmoil between him and JT Miller. Huge disappointment. Has to be number one on the list.
Locked in at number one. However, I'm going to hit you with this take, and we don't need to talk about it now. We can even leave it as a little bit of a cliffhanger teaser so we can just fire off these bets. We always try and get you guys in and out in 30 minutes or less, keep you guys moving into your busy lives. I like this guy next year, Steele, as a sneaky bounce back candidate. I'm just going to say it.
Oh, goodness.
And it's okay if it doesn't make sense because of how bad he has been this year. But also that I will give you your credit where credit is due, that you said this to me maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 seasons ago when I had him in one of our young gun breakdowns and I had him very high. And you said, I understand, but don't reach. I'm not sold on him. Credit due. You were right. There are some flaws in this guy's game. And I think a lot of it has to do with confidence in between the ears, what have you. But let me just say this. A lot of what's gone on this season, and it doesn't matter for fantasy, and he's still the biggest disappointment, feels like it's been non-hockey related. Is that still a part of being a hockey player? And do you have to take it on the chin and figure it out if your teammates aren't getting along or what have you? Yes, you do, 100%. But I think maybe next year this guy's not going anywhere, right? You just said it yourself. With the salary, he is going to get all the chance in the world next season to continue to be a number one center. I'm just saying, don't just write him off completely just yet. This season, for sure, disappointment. He's probably cooked you in multiple weeks if you're a head-to-head guy or gal. However, next season could be sneaky. Over to you, Steele. Just hit me with your picks. Don't trip my Pettersson breakdown, and we'll get after it.
Let's get after it. Big-time bets. I believe 5 games on the schedule for Wednesday night. Yes, 5 games. First pick, Rangers on the puck line against the Minnesota Wild. A lot of life left for the New York Rangers, and without Eriksson Ek and Kirill Kaprizov, they struggle defensively. They're going into New York. I'm comfortable enough taking the Rangers on the puck line here. Second pick, Avalanche on the puck line against the Chicago Blackhawks as well. You're not going to get enough juice for the money line. It's minus 380 right now on FanDuel. So take the puck line. Avalanche absolutely rocking again. Leafs on the money line against the Panthers. Lock of the night. This is a massive game. Big decision for the Atlantic Division top spot right now. At home, Maple Leafs money line. Lock of the night.
Juicy. Let's have it, Steele. First and foremost, I like the under in this one. This is the time of year you're going to hear from Uncle Flip a whole lot. Playoff-like atmosphere, tight checking, low scoring. Stolars against the old team, whatever storyline you want to read into. I'm going to take it up to 6.5, and I'm going to take the under. Love that pick. On the Avs on the puck line, and here's a little food for thought. The Avs are 6-4-0 in their last 10 against the Blackhawks. Doesn't exactly jump off the page, but how about those 6 wins, Steele? Not by 2 or more goals, by 3 or more goals. So good for us on the puck line. The
Let's
puck
go,
line
baby.
king has returned once again, and so has one of my favorite prop picks. And I'm doing it mostly because I've been burned, actually, the last two times. I've said Cale Makar, anytime assist. In his career against the Chicago Blackhawks, 9 assists in 13 career regular season games. Hit me with the Cale Makar anytime assist. If the Avs feast, Makar is going to feast. And you know what my favorite part about this is? Because that's how confident I am. In the last 2 games, he has been held off the score sheet in terms of an apple. So that odd is going to be inflated to something juicy. It's hammer time, Steele. Makar, anytime assist. I say put all of our picks together. The only one that's scaring me is the Leafs. However, that's just because I'm a jaded Leafs fan and I'm tired of losing. But let's get after it anyway.
We're getting after it for Wednesday night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, please go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Rodin, we wish you good luck with your bets tonight, your weekly matchups in the playoffs, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.